Qualified immunity must be abolished in order to ensure accountability and justice for everyone. Alternatively, if it is to be upheld, it should be applied equally to all citizens, regardless of their profession or position in society. I think we need to take some time and ponder the concept of qualified immunity and its implications in our society. It's a term that's been floating around a lot lately, and it's definitely worth understanding. Qualified immunity is a legal doctrine in the United States that shields government officials from being held personally liable for discretionary actions that they perform within their official capacity. Now, to put it simply, it's a protective layer that prevents public officials, including law enforcement officers, from being sued for their actions they take while doing their jobs, as long as those actions do not violate clearly established constitutional rights. Now, this concept does have its roots going back to the 19th century, but it was the Supreme Court case Pearson v. Ray in 1967 that gave birth to the modern interpretation of qualified immunity. Now, the purpose was to protect officials who act in good faith and believe their actions are lawful from the burden of lawsuits. That was seen as a way to balance two important interests: the need to hold public officials accountable when they exercise power irresponsibly, and the need to shield officials from harassment, distraction, and liability when they perform their duties reasonably. Today, the doctrine is applied in cases where a government official is sued for money damages by someone who claims their constitutional rights were violated. Before the case can proceed, the plaintiff must show that the official violated a clearly established constitutional right. And if they can't, the official is entitled to qualified immunity and the case is dismissed. But what does clearly established mean? Well, it generally means that a court has previously ruled on a similar case, setting a precedent that the official should have been aware of. However, this can be a high hurdle for plaintiffs to overcome, often leading to officials being granted qualified immunity even in cases where their conduct appears to be questionable. Now that we have a basic grasp of what qualified immunity is, let's take a little deeper look into the heated debate surrounding it. The question is, does it serve as a necessary protection for public officials, or does it facilitate a lack of accountability and a two-tiered justice system? Now stay tuned as we explore this perspective next. Why do some people staunchly support the concept of qualified immunity? I mean, this question is certainly worth considering, as there are compelling arguments that advocate for the preservation of this legal principle. One of the primary reasons that qualified immunity enjoys support is its role as a protective shield for public officials, particularly those in law enforcement. I mean, the nature of their work often puts them in situations where they have to make split-second decisions under extreme pressures. Qualified immunity in this context is seen as a necessary layer of protection against frivolous and unfair lawsuits that could arise from these challenging situations. Imagine being a police officer, for instance. Every day you're out on the streets making difficult decisions in the blink of an eye. You're tasked with maintaining peace and order, often in volatile situations. I mean, without the security of qualified immunity, there could be a constant fear of legal backlash, which might impact not only the effectiveness, but also the willingness of these officers to perform their duties. Furthermore, the assurance of qualified immunity can be a significant factor in attracting talented individuals to public service. The idea of having a certain level of job security in the face of potential mistakes or errors in judgment can be quite appealing. I mean, after all, we are all human and prone to making mistakes, aren't we? Especially when in high stress, high stakes situations. Qualified immunity, therefore, serves as a kind of insurance for public officials. It allows them to carry out their roles with a greater degree of confidence and assurance, knowing that they won't be personally liable for every decision they make in the line of duty. While these arguments present a persuasive case for the continuation of qualified immunity, they are not without their critics. On the other hand, not everyone believes in the virtues of qualified immunity. So let's take a look at that here in the next part of the video. What fuels the calls for reform or abolishing of qualified immunity? Now, the argument against qualified immunity is anchored on the premise that it inhibits victims of rights violations from seeking justice. The doctrine has been criticized for its role in creating a protective barrier around government officials, especially law enforcement officers, shielding from legal repercussions for their actions, even when those actions clearly infringe upon citizens' rights. Take, for instance, the numerous cases that have made headlines where qualified immunity has been invoked to protect officials from lawsuits after serious misconduct. These incidences have led many to question the extent to which qualified immunity discourages public servants from being held accountable, thereby undermining the very essence of justice. And another major concern is the potential for the creation of a two-tiered justice system. The present state of affairs, where some individuals, by virtue of their profession or position, can evade legal consequences for their actions while others cannot, strikes the heart of the principle of equality before the law. It sends a message that some people are above the law, a concept that is fundamentally at odds with democratic values. Moreover, critics argue that qualified immunity can inadvertently encourage misconduct. If officials know they are unlikely to face personal liability, they may be less motivated to adhere to the high standards of conduct, thereby potentially leading to more rights violations. Lastly, we consider the impact on public trust. For a society to function effectively, citizens must have confidence in their public institutions. Yet when these institutions are seen as protecting their own at the expense of justice for the citizens they serve, public trust can be seriously eroded. In summary, the arguments against qualified immunity center on its role in preventing justice for victims, shielding officials from accountability, potentially leading to a two-tiered system, and the eroding of public trust. It is apparent that the debate over qualified immunity is far from one-sided. So where does this leave us in the debate over qualified immunity? While the crux of the matter is the need for reform or abolition of qualified immunity, the current state of affairs is simply untenable. We're living in a society where some people are shielded from the consequences of their actions, while others are held to account. Now, this disparity creates a two-tiered system of justice, which is fundamentally at odds with the principles of fairness and equality. Now, the importance of accountability cannot be overstated. It's a cornerstone of a functioning democracy. It ensures that those in power are held to the same standards as the rest of us. It's what keeps our society in check, preventing abuses of power and ensuring that everyone, regardless of their position, is subject to the rule of law. At the same time, justice for all citizens is a non-negotiable. It's not simply about punishing wrongdoers, but also about making sure that everybody's rights are respected and protected. And right now, qualified immunity is standing in the way of that. So how do we go about addressing this issue? Well, reforming qualified immunity could be one way. This could mean narrowing its scope so that only applies in cases where the law is genuinely unclear. Or it could mean introducing stricter criteria for when qualified immunity can be invoked, making it harder for public officials to evade responsibility for their actions. Alternatively, we could consider abolishing qualified immunity altogether. This would mean that all citizens, regardless of their profession or position, would be held equally accountable under the law. Now, this would definitely be a radical step, but one that would go a long way towards ensuring a perfectly level playing field for all. But I do not believe that that's pragmatic. Of course, these are just potential ways forward. The path we ultimately choose will depend on a myriad of factors, including political will, public sentiment, and judicial interpretations. But what's clear is that change is needed. In essence, the future of qualified immunity hangs in a delicate balance. In essence, the future of qualified immunity hangs in a delicate balance. Now, as I conclude this discussion, I revisit the question, should qualified immunity be reformed, abolished, or universally applied? We've looked at the labyrinth of qualified immunity, a concept that has ignited the fiery debate across our nation. Advocates for qualified immunity argue that it's a crucial shield, protecting our public officials from frivolous lawsuits and unnecessary legal harassment. It allows them to carry on their duties without the constant fear of potential litigation. And on the other side of the coin, critics argue that the shield has become a fortress, enabling government officials, particularly those in law enforcement, to evade accountability for violating citizens' rights. The current application of qualified immunity has resulted in a two-tier justice system, where some individuals are immune from legal repercussions while others face the full weight of the law. And this disparity raises the question of fairness and equality before the law, a principle that lies in the heart of our justice system. The need for reform or complete abolition of qualified immunity is palpable. If this doctrine is to be upheld, then it should be applied universally, ensuring that all citizens, regardless of their profession or position, are held equally accountable under the law. The importance of ensuring accountability and justice for all citizens cannot be overstated. Our society thrives when its citizens trust its institutions, and that trust is bred through transparency, fairness, and accountability. Whether it's reform, abolition, or universal application, change is necessary to restore this trust and to ensure the integrity of our justice system. In the end, the debate over qualified immunity is a reflection of our society's struggle to balance a need for accountability and the protection of public officials. It is a debate that is far from over, and one that will undoubtedly shape the course of our justice system in the years to come. And that is my thoughts on this for today. This is Drac saying stay safe. Peace out, everyone.